What was he saying the other day about robots? Was that what it was? You like said something like you tweeted him back like something like
I was like, LOL, what? Like, what'd you say?
Yeah, what was it?
I love that guy, but sometimes he says shit that I just go, what? You need someone like me next to you all the time. That's what Alex Jones needs. He just needs me to go, hey man, what? Stop. That might not be it. Some people need a rudder. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And by the way, if I'm your rudder, you got a serious fucking problem. You got a serious fucking problem.
I was hoping that flat earther was going to, like, do the rocket shit. Yeah, I was waiting. I was so excited for this.
Apparently he's done it before. He shot himself like 160 miles into space or something.
God.
Not really.
Yeah.
No, he did. I think he did shoot himself like 1.6 miles into the air. Something ridiculous in the past. And he recovered. Took him like several days to recover from the G-forces. I do believe that this is something that was in the article. It might be something he said. He might just be crazy.
Yeah, he's trying to be like Evel Knievel. He was trying to do a bunch of different things, and he jumped onto the flat Earth thing about a year ago to gain money. So that's what I read. He's trying to like jump a limo over a fucking gorge, some dumb shit like that.
Well, no one believes it.
Wait a minute, how do you know? Oh, yes, they do. Son of a bitch.
I read the article about it when it first was coming out last week.
Yeah, you know what? I read one of the craziest fucking arguments someone said. One of the flat Earth proponents said about it. This is going around apparently, so forgive me if you've heard this. But the idea that a ship doesn't really disappear over the horizon, that you could always zoom in on it if you just have enough of a powerful lens in your camera. So they think that in some way is proof that the Earth is flat. That's just proof of how far you can see. That's all it is. You don't understand. Like, the curve of the Earth, it takes forever. It's fucking huge. Like, you're...
Fear and what they fear, they seek to destroy.
X-Men on Netflix. Tickets on sale now.
I know you guys have been seeking and I watched a lot of your previous shows, and I'm a huge fan, by the way. I was actually an anti-theist. I was actually just completely against the notion of God and just never really believed in God my whole life until I realized that
I just checked the caller list, and I'm very excited to say that we have back an old standby caller. It's Mark from the Stone Church in Austin.
Okay.
Mark, wait a minute.
This is Mark?
Yeah,
Hi,
welcome back to the show. How are you?
Hi. Last time I called, I was a bit nervous when I talked to Matt and Jeff.
Yeah, you talked to me the time before that, too.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
It's okay.
You have to understand that my church is fundamentalist, so
yeah.
we have we have a very strict opinion, and I just it's sometimes nervous when you talk to someone. You see, it's not normal for us to talk about things like this.
Well, I understand it must be difficult because, I mean, when you're in a group of people who sort of all agree on stuff, it can be kind of jarring to have some very different opinions being expressed on the air. It's probably...
Right. Have you ever been to our church before?
No, I haven't, but, you know, I'm not saying I wouldn't be willing to go sometime.
Right. Well, if you want to understand what we believe, just go to austinstone.org/resources/sermons, and there are MP3s you can listen to.
I'm pretty sure I actually already listened to one, but I don't remember which one it was.
Okay, well, I think the most important sermon for you to listen to is the Sermon on Hell, because we believe in a literal hell. It's not a symbolic separation from God. It's a literal place.
Okay, and that's important to us so that we could understand that that's what you believe?
So that we can understand that when the kids at our church who have become fans of your shows get caught watching it, there's the parents, they all got together, they were really worried because they believe if their kids watch your show, agree with you, they will literally burn.
Well, maybe the parents should just not believe that so much.
They're worried about their kids, and
Wait a minute, can I ask you a question?
yeah.
Would you worship somebody that was going to burn your child to death?
Well, that is. We also believe in heaven.
Right, I understand. So if somebody said, there's a chance that, but if I don't, if your kid doesn't believe in me and doesn't believe that I will burn him to death, I'm going to douse him with gasoline and put a match to him. Is that somebody you would love and worship?
That is what the Bible says.
I agree. Well, I agree with that's your interpretation.
It says that at the end of the age, God will round up the non-believers like weeds, like a farmer rounds up after the harvest, and burn them.
And you believe this, I understand, but what I'm saying is, why would you worship a God that would be so hideous?
We believe that it's not shocking.
Actually, it kind of is. I mean, you're saying that this God, you're afraid that this God will burn your children, for all eternity, torture them, and you're saying that you don't want your children to question that, or if, because if it's really true, they need to believe and worship this God like you believe and worship this God, that you're saying your concern is that this God may torture your kids forever. And I'm saying, why would you worship a God that you think would torture your children forever?
We think that we deserve it for what we've done to God. That's what I mean. It's not shocking if you consider that we spit on God and trampled on His holiness.
Okay.
That He would do that. Actually, what one of our preachers, Matt Carter, said is it's shocking that He would even give us the chance to go to heaven.
So if I don't believe in, if somebody doesn't, if somebody spits on me, then I can douse them with gasoline and put a match to them, and you think that's perfectly reasonable?
Well, actually, God is an infinite authority. So if someone were to spit on you, that would be like, our preacher said, like a drop of...
Chilling, bro. Chilling.
Like
What's up, Art in the Dark?
Pacific Ocean next to what God would do.
So let me get this straight, though. You're saying that you actually teach your children then that they deserve to be tortured forever, right?
And this wouldn't be like you offended a human. This would be like the punishment would be infinite because God's authority is infinite. It's not like if I spit on you and you tortured me. This would be like he said that the comparison between your punishment and God's punishment would be like a comparison between a raindrop and the Pacific Ocean.
Okay, well, can I burn, just your hand, then?
Thanks, bro.
Can I, douse your hand in gasoline and burn it because I'm not God? I guess it's disturbing to me that you have a doctrine that teaches you that people deserve to be tortured forever, and that you're willing to teach your children that, and also that
only if they reject God.
It doesn't matter. Why in the world would not believing in something require that a person should be tortured forever, and why would you think that's reasonable? And to top it all off, unless you have some evidence that this God even exists, why would you believe any of this?
Well, hang on, Mark. Let me try to do a little bridge building, because that's what we do here on the Atheist Experience. Last time you called, I remembered that you asked Matt what he would think if he were still a Christian. And he gave you a pretty good sort of synopsis of what you would think, and you thought that he understood it pretty well. Am I right? You remember that?
Let me add that my church is fundamentalist, way more fundamentalist than his church.
Okay, but he said, like, you know, I'd be concerned that our kids, you know, would be burned forever for becoming apostates, and you said, yeah, that's pretty close to what we think. So we understand where you're coming from, right? Sort of?
I think you would understand if you were to listen to the sermons, come to the church.
But my question to you is, do you understand where we're coming from? I mean, do you understand that from our point of view, we don't believe what you believe? We haven't been convinced that God is real and that the Bible is absolute truth. And I mean, you get that, right? I mean, like, you're coming at us telling us that you're afraid that your kids are going to be burned forever, and Tracy is kind of humoring you here, but really, you understand that the reason we're not taking this more seriously is because we just haven't seen any good reason to think that's true. You get that?
Right. I know I'm not as charismatic as the preachers at my church, but if you listen
it's not
to
about
the
charisma.
I referenced, you will get a good idea of where I'm coming from.
It's not about charisma, really. I mean, the problem is that if you're gonna rest things on people with charisma, I mean, like, I hate to invoke a cliche, but Hitler had charisma. He convinced a lot of people to believe a lot of horrible things about Jews, but you and I know that the things that he was saying weren't right, right?
Yeah.
So,
have you listened to sermons before?
Oh, lots of them. I used to listen to, what is it, KIXL in the car all the time.
Sermons about hell?
Sure. And so, I'm telling you,
so
I understand.
We believe, and you know that we find you repulsive.
I know.
You are leading our kids to
truth.
Well, no, you say that we're leading your kids to hell, but we think, and apparently a lot of the kids in your church also think, that this stuff really is kind of made up, that you don't have a good reason to believe it. You see where they're coming from? I mean, you know, they're really, you know, their parents are probably coming down on them hard, grounding them, you know, threatening them with the most horrible punishment.
Instead of giving them some evidence for why we're wrong.
Right.
And the other thing, I mean, just to give you some background, I'm ex-Church of Christ, so I understand hell completely. We had literal hell.
I mean, I was born
and
atheist.
I don't believe it anymore. And when somebody says to me that they're not concerned about demonstrating their God is real, but they're willing to still go forward and teach, despite the fact that they can't make a demonstration that any of it's real, that they're going to go ahead and teach their children that they're deserving of eternal torture, and that, you know, this is not a problem. I have a problem with what you're teaching your kids, frankly. I think that it's damaging, and I think that it's a horrible thing for a parent to tell their children, I think you deserve eternal torture, especially if they can't really demonstrate that there's any reality behind that claim.
There is a logical argument. Our preacher told us, he told us the logical argument. If you offend your parents, they might ground you or spank you.
Yeah, but again, I'm still not sure if you're getting
the
this.
Supreme Court, they might lock you up. And if you offend God, his authority is even bigger, so the punishment is bigger.
Okay, I don't believe your God is real. Okay, so I think you are basically making your children afraid of the monster under the bed and telling them that there's something to fear there when there is nothing there. And the fact that you believe there's something there but can't demonstrate it doesn't help your case.
How would I demonstrate to you? You have to pray, you have to read the Bible.
No. If something is real, if this mug is real, you don't have to pray to know that it's real. When something is real, and when you want to demonstrate that it's part of existent reality, you make a demonstration of the existence of the thing. That's how you tell the difference between things that exist and things that don't. Where is your demonstration that this God manifests in some way that is demonstrable and differentiable, that can be differentiated from something that's not God?
I don't understand your question.
Okay, this mug is this mug. It's not something else, right? Here's the mug. And if you wanted, for example, to demonstrate air, like some people will say you can't see air, but I can blow up a balloon and show you, hey, you can see that it expands, that I'm putting something into it, even if you can't see it. You can make a demonstration of a thing that exists. If something doesn't manifest in some way that you can demonstrate, how do you tell the difference between that thing that doesn't manifest in some way that you can demonstrate and a thing that doesn't exist?
Well, Mark, I mean, like, let me ask you, you don't need faith to determine that your mom exists, right? I mean, you don't have to pray to your mom or, you know, hope for a special sign, because, you know, you can actually go and hang out with her. She can, you know, you can have photographic history of her. You can come face to face with her. When she talks to you, she doesn't appear as a vague feeling in your head or some sort of, you know, result after you pray, or we would say talk to yourself. You go to your mom and you say hi, and she says hi back, and everyone can see her, and everyone sees the same thing.
A lot of people can see God. Everyone at my church can see God.
But they don't seem to see the same thing, because there are, like, you know, 300,000 different denominations, or was it 30,000 denominations of Christianity alone, and they all seem to think, like, you were very careful to specify that your church is fundamentalist, because you want to distinguish yourself from those other non-fundamentalist churches who obviously think completely different things about God, right?
We have, let me just explain something to you quickly. We have an affirmation of faith and value.
So you agree to...
Go ahead.
The Bible is the Word of God. There is one true and living God who exists in three persons, God the Father, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit.
Right.
God created all things for His glory. Men and women were created in the image of God. God alone is the architect and finisher of our salvation. The Holy Spirit gives gifts to His children. The church consists of all who have trusted the Lord Jesus Christ for their eternal salvation. Heaven and hell are real places. Jesus Christ will one day return to establish His kingdom. Everyone in my church believes that.
So it sounds like you have to go to a lot of work to have people recite all this stuff to make sure that they're on the same page.
We have sermons every Sunday. We just had one today.
Right, so you have one guy telling everybody what to believe, and sure enough, they all agree. I don't need sermons to tell me that my mom exists.
The other question is, while it's fine, you know, we do usually ask people, what do you believe and why? And you're very good at explaining what you believe, and yet I have no understanding yet.
To tonight's SmackDown. Christopher Hitchens and Al Sharpton. As you know, Hitchens' book, now out 126 hours, I believe, is ranked 3rd on Amazon. It has a benign title which wouldn't attract anybody. God is not great, how religion poisons everything. I was told that when Al Sharpton heard the title for the first time, God is not great, he said, says who? To serve as umpire and referee, I have asked Jacob Weisberg, the editor of Slate, the free online daily magazine offering analysis and commentary about politics, news and culture to welcome on the stage Christopher Hitchens and Al Sharpton. I would also like to very quickly thank not also only Jacob Weisberg, but Carrie Goldstein. I worked with Carrie the last time to bring to this library John Hope Franklin and President Clinton. And now it is my great pleasure to welcome Jacob Weisberg, who will serve as umpire and referee, and Christopher Hitchens and the Reverend Al Sharpton.
I'm honored to be doing the officiating this evening. Thank you, Paul, for the introduction. I will be doing the referee's honors without a striped jersey or a whistle or red cards or flags, because these two gentlemen, in addition to being among our most formidable debaters, you may have seen Reverend Sharpton debate already, you may not have seen Christopher Hitchens debate, are gentlemen, and I know will be very civil to each other, although I think well, I won't hold you back. Our format tonight, Christopher is going to start out with a statement of some of the ideas in his book for about 5 minutes. Reverend Sharpton a chance to respond for about the same length of time. Should they need any prodding, which I seriously doubt, I will provide it. And we will go back and forth for about an hour, and then we'll have some time for questions for about 20 minutes or so before we wrap up. Well, we'll go to questions, I think, as soon as debate flags. To start with, the brief introductions. In this corner, Christopher Hitchens. I would call him the devil's advocate in this debate, but he has actually played that role. If you read his book, he recounts the story of when he was invited to the Vatican to argue pro bono, I believe, against sainthood for Mother Teresa. Of course, hold back. Of course, to call him devil's advocate is probably doesn't do him justice, because to many people he actually is the devil, less because of his views about God than because of his views on the Iraq War, which we may or may not get into this evening. He is the author of, I believe, 18 books, including monographs on the subjects of Thomas Paine, Thomas Jefferson, and George Orwell, a book on Anglo-American relations. I won't go through all of them here, but several of them collect his literary and political essays, which you can read, among other places, in Vanity Fair, Slate, and The Atlantic. Last week he won yet another National Magazine Award for poems and commentary. In this corner, Reverend Al Sharpton. He is a Pentecostal minister, civil rights activist, and, as you know, a former presidential candidate. He also has a radio talk show on which Don Imus recently appeared so unsuccessfully. Unlike Christopher Hitchens, he is a man of God. He was ordained as a minister at the age of 9. Is that correct? He grew up in Brooklyn and Queens. He has led protests. He led a protest in Vieques in Puerto Rico, which led to the closing of the American naval base there. He led the protests after the killing of Amadou Diallo by the New York City police. He is, I should say, a leader in the campaign to eliminate homophobia in the black church. And he ran for the Senate in 1988, 1992, 1994. He ran for mayor of New York in 1997, and he ran for president in 2004. Making, I should say, the Democratic primaries infinitely more interesting than they would have been otherwise, and probably more interesting than they will be this time without him. Christopher, I would like to start with you. What have you got against God?
Good grief, so I had to come to read something on me that as you were being ordained, when I was 9, I was just getting out of bed. I was 9 when I thought I saw through it, when my biology teacher told me that God was so good as to make education read was one of the most restful to our eyes. And I thought, this is nonsense. I knew nothing about chlorophyll or photosynthesis, nothing about the theory of evolution, nothing about adaptation, nothing of the sort. I just knew she'd got everything all wrong. And of course the argument against faith, against religion, falls into two essential halves, not necessarily congruent, but I believe congruent. The first is, it's not true. Religion comes from the infancy of our species. I won't say race because I don't think our species is subdivided by races. Infancy of our species, when we didn't know that the Earth went round the sun. We didn't know that germs caused disease. We didn't know when we were told in Genesis, you're given dominion over all creatures, that this did not include microorganisms, because we didn't know they were there. So we didn't know they had dominion over us. When diseases broke out, it was blamed on wickedness, or sometimes on the Jews. Or if it was by Jews, on the Amalekites, or as you will. We didn't know anything about the nature of the Earth's crust, how it was cooling, earthquakes, storms, all of this were a mystery. Well, we are at least to that extent a reasoning species. Even a conspiracy theory is often better than no theory at all. The mind searches for form. We're now stuck with the forms that we found in our infancy, in our primitive, barbaric past. Well, that could be fine, still. No nation can be without mythology or myth or legend. And there are people who say, well, it's not exactly true. Virgins don't conceive. Okay. Bushes don't burn forever. Although why that would be so impressive, I've never understood.
What up? Back in the studio.
And don't walk and so on and so on. Okay, you're right. It's not really true. It does come from a rather fearful period of the Dark Ages, but at least it's nice to believe it. It teaches good precepts. This,
back in the studio.
Very radically untrue. I give in my book the example, which I'll give you now.
I just put fresh paints on the palette.
On my youth, and I know on the Reverend's too, Dr. Martin.
About to get busy in a minute.
My friend Taylor Branch's book about Dr. King, I would rather call him Doctor than Reverend, because I'm sorry to say I think it's a higher title of honor. Taylor Branch's trilogy about him is called Parting the Waters, The Pillar of Fire, and At Jordan's Edge. And everybody literate here knows the story of Exodus and understands what Dr. King meant when he demanded that his people be free of bondage. But if you think about it for a second, it's a very good thing that the good doctor was only using this metaphorically. If he'd really been invoking the lessons of Genesis and Exodus, he would have been saying that his people had the right to kill anyone who stood in their way, to exterminate all other tribes, to mutilate their children's genitalia, to make slaves of those they captured, to take the land and property of others, to engage in rather long and hideous and elaborate arguments about ox goring, and finally, which is the sentence that ends that, or the verse that ends that section of the book, should not suffer a witch to live, the warrant for witch burning. In other words, in these books, there are the warrants for genocide, for slavery, for the torture of children, for disobedience, for genital mutilation, for annexation, for rape, and all the rest of it. But it's a very good thing that this is man-made. There are those who say that they wish they could believe, and I suppose a decent atheist could say that if only for lack of evidence he wishes he or she could. I can't be among their number. I'm very glad it is not true that there is a permanent, unshakable, unchallengeable celestial supervision. A divine North Korea in which no privacy, no liberty is possible from the moment of conception, not just till the moment of death, but until well after.
Alright guys, I'm gonna jump right into this shit.
Now I know what a prayerful state would look like. I know what it would be like to praise God from dawn till dusk. I've seen it happen. And it's the most disgusting and depressing and pointless and soulless thing you can picture. But at least with North Korea, you can die and you can leave. Christianity won't let you do that. As I mentioned another thing about the Old Testament may have, or any Jews and Christians who like it may like this too. They may have genocide, rape, racism, all the rest of the things I've mentioned, but it never mentions punishment of the dead. When you're done, when you're in the mass grave into which you've been thrown as an Amalekite, it's over. Not until gentle Jesus meets you out is the concept of hell introduced. Eternal torture, eternal punishment for you and all your family for the smallest transgression. I have no hesitation in saying that it's a wicked belief. I've also no hesitation in saying, and I mustn't trespass on the Reverend's time, that we don't need it in two senses. One is it's wicked. Two, we have, and always have had, a much superior tradition. We know that Democritus and Epicurus worked out in ancient Athens the world was made of atoms, that the gods did not exist and certainly took no interest in human affairs, and would be foolish to do so, and would be wicked if they did. We have the tradition that brings us through. Galileo and Spinoza and Thomas Paine and Voltaire and Thomas Jefferson and Bertrand Russell and Albert Einstein, men of great wisdom and insight, by all means struck by the awe-inspiring character of our universe, by all means open to devotional music and architecture and poetry, by all means aware of the transcendent, but look through the Hubble telescope if you want to see something that is awe-inspiring. And don't look to blood-stained old myths. Now, why now? Now, why am I doing this now, people ask? Well, I'll tell you why now, because in the last few years it's become impossible to turn a page in a newspaper without being, as the religious would say, offended. In other words, I don't think I sound self-pitying if I say that I'm offended that a cartoonist in a tiny democratic country in Scandinavia, Denmark, can't do his job without a death threat, and that no American magazine or newspaper would reprint those cartoons, either to elucidate the question or in solidarity. I'm offended that civil society in Iraq is being destroyed, leveled by the parties of God. I'm offended that people in this country believe that they have the right to advocate the teaching of garbage to children under the fatuous name of intelligent design. I believe that we're I thought you'd never clap. Just as I believe that where religion ends, philosophy begins, where alchemy ends, chemistry begins, where astrology ends, astronomy begins, and now when the people will say, well, let's give equal time to astrology in the schools, it's nonsense, dangerous and sinister nonsense. The Pope says, AIDS may be bad, but condoms are much worse. What kind of moral teaching is this? And how many people are going to die for such dogma? You see what I mean? I'll be very brief. There's an end to this, an end particularly to the cultural cringe that says that if someone can claim to be a religious spokesman, they are entitled to respect. I have to say it in your presence, sir. I think that the title Reverend is something people should be more concerned to live down than to live up to. Thank you.
We will get back to some of that, but Reverend Sharpton, in your rebuttal, would you take a moment to correct Christopher on his misconception that religion was somehow incidental to the civil rights movement?
That's all you want me to rebut?
No. I guess feel free to cover that.
Well, first of all, let me thank you for inviting me and to have this debate. It is the first time in my long career that I was not assumed to be the devil in a debate. It's an unusual place for me on the stage. So I couldn't turn down representing God and the divine in a public encounter. But I think that several things in rebutting with Brother Hitchens says, you don't have a problem with living up or down to being brother, do you? Yeah, right. I think that you made a very interesting analysis of how people use or misuse God, but you made no argument about God himself. And by attacking the quote wicked unquote use of God does not at all address the existence of God or non-existence of God. We are sitting in a room that, because of lights, we assume that there is electricity in the building. Electricity can light up a room or burn it down. It does not mean electricity does not exist because it burns the building down, or that it is inherently wicked. It is how people use it. So clearly people have misused God as they've misused other things that are possibly positive. But its existence is not in any way proven or disproven by you giving a long diatribe on those that have mishandled and misused God, because there are many that you can cite that have acted in a way that shows the goodness of God. Your book, God is Not Great, could be refuted by many that feel he is great or she is great, whatever way you relate to God. Science, to me, does not wipe away the existence of God, because science had to start somewhere. So to pick up mankind in its evolving state does not tell me where mankind began, how it became a long story of ordered steps. Well, who ordered them? Why do things follow such a natural progression? Who set the progress? And in fact, even the term wicked, if there is no God and if there is no supreme mechanism that governs the world, what makes right right and what makes wrong wrong? Why don't we just go by whoever's the strongest at any given period in history? Because nothing is wicked. Because whoever's in power at the time would determine what is wicked and what is not wicked, because there's no real moral code, because there's nobody to judge that. So at one hand, we're going to argue God doesn't exist. On the other hand, we're going to call people wicked. Wicked according to who? And according to what? It would be based on whoever has the power at that time. So I think that the real thing that I'm interested in, Mr. Hitchens, is to really discuss the idea of God and the idea of a supreme being, and how creatures and creation have just by some great coincidence, an unexplained scheme, follows some order that just happened by itself. Something, some force, some overruling force had to set all of that pattern in, and it continues thousands of years later. Can you give a million examples of where people have misused that, where they've distorted it, where in the name of God or North Korea or other tragedies have happened? Yes. In terms of the civil rights movement, it was absolutely fueled by a belief in God and a belief in right or wrong. And had not there been this belief that there was a right and a wrong, civil rights movement that you alluded to or that you referred to would not have existed, because what made it wrong for people to be slaves? What made it wrong for humans to be treated unequally? Because there was nobody to say that they were all equal. It was whoever had the strength. But at the end, what is refreshing is that you are a man of faith. Because any man that at this date still has faith that there are weapons of mass destruction in Iraq has more faith than any religious person I know.
Very well. It's a very generous response. Do you mind if I take it in reverse order? The belief that there were weapons of mass destruction, or rather the conviction that Saddam Hussein was interested in weapons of mass destruction, you could, I suppose, describe as an argument from design. In other words, he'd had them before, he'd known how to conceal them, he'd used them several times, he seems to be prepared to risk his entire political career on the idea of reacquiring them. I would say that was not a belief that had no evidence, and I would say that anyone who treated him as if he was innocent on the subject would be a sap, actually, would be my short word for it. Second, on the civil rights movement, I expected you to be more assertive. I don't know what Dr. King's private convictions about religion were. I know that he studied Hegel, I know that he studied Marx. I know that among his very close entourage were a large number of secular socialists and communists. You know their names too. Sandy Levinson is probably the best known, but among the black civil rights leadership, Bayard Rustin, secular socialist, Philip Randolph, secular socialist trade union leader. These were the building blocks for the March on Washington, as was Victor Reuther and many others. The belief that it is illegal as well as evil to keep black Americans in subjection does not require any supernatural endorsement. It had been proved repeatedly in law and in morality and in ethics, and demonstrated in practice. The only thing that had always been consistently justified by the churches was initially slavery, the right to hold someone as a slave, biblically warranted, and the right to keep the races separate, which is endorsed by a church that, just to give a contemporary example, one of the current candidates for the Republican nomination is a member of a church, the so-called Mormon Church of Latter-day Saints, that until 1965 had it as an article of faith that the Bible separates the sons of Ham and makes them lesser. Well, I don't have to disparage a text like that because I don't think it has any authority. So in a sense I return the question to you. Now, I didn't say that God was misused. I hope I wasn't so poorly understood by everybody. I said that the idea of God is a dictatorial one to begin with, the belief in a supreme, eternal, invigilating creator who knows what you think and what you do and cares about you, that will reward or punish you and watches you while you sleep, is, I think, a horrific belief. A man-made one, fortunately. I'm very glad there's no evidence for it. In case I was misunderstood, let me assert again, I think it's innately an awful belief. However, the cleverest theologian, and have been some, has never been able to demonstrate that such a person exists. It's impossible to do so. It's not possible either for me to demonstrate conclusively that no such person exists. That cannot be done either. But one thing can be done. A person who claims not to know only that this person exists, a task beyond our brain, but to claim to know his or her, I accept your correction, Reverend, mind, to say, I know, because I'm in holy orders, what this entity wants you to do, what he wants you to eat, who he wants you to go to bed with, and how he wants you to go to bed with. What you may read, in what associations in private you may form, what thoughts you may have. That person is out of the argument now, it seems to me. We know that no one knows that. So the claim made by the religious that they know God, they know his mind, and they can tell us what to do in his name, is, I think, exploded. Further, it is not argued by my side, at any rate, or by no one I know on it, that our presence here on the planet is something that is susceptible of a smooth, logical, reasonable explanation. To the contrary, we are still very much in doubt as to precisely how we came to be human and to separate ourselves from some of our common ancestors. We also know that of the species that have been on this small planet, in this tiny solar system, since the beginning of measurable time, of the number that were ever in existence, more than 98.9% have become extinct. A certain solipsism, I think, is required to believe that we, as a resulting species, are somehow the center of the creative cosmos. This is not modesty, as the Christians call it. It's not humility. It's an unbelievably arrogant claim to make. but at least it makes up for the other claim we're supposed to put up with, which is, well, yes, but we're also miserable sinners conceived in filth and doomed to abject ourselves. Both of these positions are too extreme, too strenuous, too fanatical, and both of them reinforce each other in unpleasant ways, and both should be outgrown by us. Voila.
Well, I think you probably had a bad Sunday school teacher, because a lot of what you're saying is based on dogma and has nothing to do with one's belief in a supreme being. You're discussing, again, religions, dogmas, denominations, not the existence or non-existence of God. I'm glad to hear you concede you can't prove he or she doesn't exist any more than you claim that those that believe. Are you going to claim that that's God speaking on my behalf? Or the devil, which you choose. But I think that, again, the basic core question of God goes way beyond any example, no matter how witty or humorous, of those that come in God's name, because it is the dictates of denominations or organized religious groups that tell you what to eat and what to wear and who to sleep with and all of that. That has nothing to do with the existence of an order to the universe that is clear and evident. That science, I think, confirms that it evolved from somewhere. That's how I relate to God. To your point, however, since I wasn't assertive enough in the first going forward, and I think one guy said that the other night in Vegas, and Mayweather got more assertive, he won the fight, so watch out on that. But I'll get a little more assertive. Dr. King's organization, Brother Hitchens' name, was the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. So there's no question that he himself saw that the basis of the movement was God-based. Did he have some socialists that did not believe in God that associated with the movement? Absolutely. But they joined SCLC's endeavors after SCLC was formed. In fact, SCLC was formed in 1957 in New Orleans, before many of them that organized the March on Washington. When Bayard Rustin, who I knew, went down south, his problem was he debated a lot with the ministers there, who was the core of that group. So to try and secularize the civil rights movement is just totally inaccurate. It was a church-based, faith-based movement. There's no question about that. And Dr. King, way before he studied Hegel and the rest, he grew up in Ebenezer Baptist Church, was an ordained minister, first went to Morehouse, then Crozer Theological Seminary, then went to Boston to study those that you have referred to. So let's not reinvent Dr. King any more than we try to reduce God to some denominational convention. And as for the one Mormon running for office, those that really believe in God will defeat him anyway. So don't worry about that. That's a temporary situation. But I think the core challenge that I would have is that I would say to you that if your argument is that there are those that have used religion, as in slavery or as even today, to oppress people and use religion to be unfair to people or have misinterpreted scriptures, you would get no debate from me. I think that is a fact of history, and one that many of us have had to fight against. That still does not disqualify God any more than using anything in nature that is wrong. To say that one eats food that is poisoned does not mean one should therefore starve, because food is inherently bad. That, I think you're confusing the misuse of religion with the existence of God. There are those that have no religious affiliations at all that believe in God. There are people that don't deal with organized church at all that still believe in God. So when you say God is not great, let's not then debate organized religion is not great, or some that have exploited organized religion is not great. You, in the title of your book, and I've had a chance to go through your book, attack God, not those that express that they are therefore standing in God's place or representing God. And in your whole oratory about weapons of mass destruction, and he thought he had it and all of that. When we found him, he was in a rat trap with a 22 pistol. He knew he didn't have any weapons of mass destruction because no one, as one that comes out of the hood, no one that has atom bombs would just retreat with a 22 and wait on the cavalry.
Any order you like.
I think I better stick to the reverse order. No, well, that's why a very good time to attack him was before he would get back what he'd lost by way of WMD. He didn't have any then, and he wasn't going to get them back either. Any more than he was going to improve his relations with Al-Qaeda. They were as good as they were ever going to get, and that was fine by me. Maybe an argument for another time, but believe me, I'm not reluctant to have it. Then we are of one mind, essentially. I mean, after all, I did not deny what's common knowledge, that Dr. Martin Luther King was the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and was indeed at the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Toronto. No, I said I cannot say to you that I know that he was a believing Christian. No, I cannot. I mean, neither can you say that to me any more than we seem to be of one mind on this too. Neither of us can prove or disprove the existence of God. The difference is between us. I don't say that I'm an ordained minister. I don't think I could push it that far. Since you're evidently an agnostic, which is a confession that I'm very welcome to have not extracted from you, but heard you make. Now, here's the question. You say these texts are misused. I say that they are not. The Old Testament says, or does not say, that Abraham was doing a noble thing by offering to sacrifice a son to prove himself loyal to God, or to the voices he was hearing in his head. It says there was a noble thing for him to do. He was rewarded for it by a great posterity and a great long life. Offering to murder his son because of hearing voices in his head. This is not moral teaching to me. Is it not the case that the Old Testament says that the Amalekites must all be destroyed down to the last child, every one among them, leave not one? Yes, it does say that. The Bishop of Llandaff, in an argument with Thomas Paine, once said, well, when it says keep the women, as Paine had pointed out, he said, I'm sure God didn't mean just to keep them for immoral purposes. But what does the Bishop of Llandaff know about that? It says, kill all the men, kill all the children, and keep the virgins. I think I know what they had in mind. I don't think it's moral teaching. To this day, there are nutbag settlers, some Israeli citizens, some of them Americans, some of them Israeli Americans, trying to settle the West Bank in the name of this prophecy and throw other people off their land and establish a theocracy that will bring on the Messiah and, they hope, Armageddon and the end of the world. Well, I think the United States Supreme Court should hear argument that not one American dime can be used constitutionally for that project. Okay? It's high time. Cut it off. These people mean us real harm. And I'm not going to dilate about what their Muslim brothers say about us. When the Quran does not say that you may be killed for changing your religion, but the Hadith, the so-called sayings of the Prophet, which are taken just as seriously, do say that. So when someone says, I'm a Muslim, and I'm telling you, Mr. Rushdie, if you apostatize from this faith, you're dead, he's not misquoting the texts. Sir, he's not. He's quoting them accurately. I think, I'll phrase it as understated as I can, I think we could do without a lot of this.
But let me respond.
I think enough already would cover.
Again, you are debating points I didn't make. I said you keep confusing the existence of God again with religious denominational beliefs. I'm not debating whether
are they separable?
Yes.
Well, fine.
Yeah, very much so. I think that you're quoting the Bible. If you said everything in the Bible you rejected, you still have not established why a belief in God, maybe a belief in God through that vehicle may be your debate. But you're not addressing God. You're talking Quran, Bibles, people's interpretation of God. That is not my debate. My debate with your book is that you're saying, therefore, since they did this to, since Abraham's was going to murder his son, there is no God. That's like 1 + 2 = 7. I mean, we're not, so Abraham may have been incorrect, if that's your point. Or what they did with the Amalekite, or what's going on in the Middle East. What does that have to do with the existence of a universe that is set on an order that I believe was set by a supreme being that continues to evolve today, that I think science has done a credible job in analyzing? Now, you can debate which one of the Bibles, Qurans, religious books may have had it right or interpreted it right, but that does not address the central question. You, sir, did not attack the Christian church or the Muslim religion or the Pope. You attacked God. And to attack God is a whole lot. You hit here and you debate here. Let's talk about God. Let's not talk about those that came in his name, and you have some maybe credible arguments against whether or not you felt that they were correct or incorrect. And again, I raised, as I did my opening statement, who decides what is wicked, what is right, what is ethical? If there's nothing there that governs humanity, whatever's ethical is whatever we decide is ethical, because we're in charge. It's all up to us.
Okay, once again, in reverse order, if I may. Religion gets its morality from us. I think it's very easy to demonstrate that. I'll do it from one of each of the two testaments.
You're back on testaments.
Well,
why don't you write a book? Testaments are not
I spend a lot of time with my Bible. Okay, my Bible. I do.
I tell you, I
do. In the there's a very famous parable in the New Testament where the alleged Jesus of Nazareth tells a story about a man from Samaria. We call him the Good Samaritan, who, finding a fellow creature in enormous distress and pain, goes well out of his way to alleviate his suffering and to follow up to make sure that his sympathy hasn't been a waste of time, to do the aftercare, if you like. Well, we know one thing about this person from Samaria. He cannot have been a Christian. Jesus is telling this story about someone he's heard of, who acted, as far as we know, from no other prompting with elementary human solidarity. What other prompting do we need? Our species would not have survived. We wouldn't be met here if we didn't have, as well as many selfish instincts, the need, and often for our own sake, to be of use to others, to combine with them, to take an interest in them, to care for them, and to worry when they're in pain. No supernatural authority, as with the civil rights movement, is required for this. Morality comes from us. Religion claims to have invented it on our behalf. Then, okay, another example from the Older Testament. Is it really to be believed that until they got to the foot of Mount Sinai, the followers of Moses believed that up to then, adultery, murder, theft, and perjury were okay? They're suddenly told, oh, hey, we got some new ideas for you. I don't think so. It's a bit of an insult to the ancient Jewish faith, of which Jacob and I are both rather disgraceful ornaments in our different ways. I think our ancestors were smarter than that, and even if they weren't smarter, they wouldn't have got that far if they'd been under the contrary impression. The golden rule is something you don't have to teach a child. There's no need to say, and if you don't follow this rule, you'll burn in hell forever. That's immoral teaching. Now, I hope I've made myself clear on the, but I'm wondering if I have, because you face me, Reverend, with two very unwelcome thoughts. Either I have been completely inarticulate in everything I've said this evening, or you have misunderstood me. I have to throw myself, or these are not mutually exclusive, and I should have seen that coming. I thought I said it's common ground. We cannot know that there was a creator, whether of ourselves or of our cosmos. If you may wish to assume one, but that's the best you can do. The evidence is all that the cosmos evolved, and the evidence that there was a single mind, purposeful creator of it, there's no evidence for that at all. By all means, believe it, as long as you don't try and make me believe it or teach it to my children.
Well, let me say, I will meet you on common ground there, but I would say that many people, I among them, in our own lives, have had experiences that make me believe that there is a God and make me believe that my seeking God and seeking the guidance of a supreme being is real to me. I'm not going by Moses. I'm not going by Peter. I'm not going by the man that you said was allegedly Jesus of Nazareth. I'm talking about in people's personal experiences with their interaction through their own faith with God can say that you or no one else can tell me that did not exist. If I was only sitting up here arguing with you over scriptures, then you would have points that I would consider valid to this discussion. But I'm not here to defend scriptures. I didn't write those scriptures. I lived my life. And in my life, the existence of God has been confirmed to me in my own personal dealings, and my own faith being vindicated and validated. That had absolutely nothing to do with scriptures, whether they were right or wrong. And again, I pose the question, when you raise the issue of morality, if there is no supervisory being, then what do we base morality on? Is it based on who has the might at any given time? Who's in power? What is morality based on? If there is no order to the universe, and therefore some being, some force that ordered it, then who determines what is right and wrong, what is moral and immoral? You use very religious terms interchangeably while you attack the idea of a God. There is nothing immoral if there's nothing in charge, because everything becomes moral if in fact the species as we are is all there is. We'll determine, let's decide every 4 years what's moral. Most Republicans do, but I mean, let's do it in the sense of, let's just say, forget all of that. We'll decide morality based on every period of time, because there is nothing up there governing it anyway. And you don't have to burn in hell to understand that life has certain guiding posts that has been set there well beyond your own being. And I think to think that the whole world was waiting on one's birth, your birth or mine, or death to set the framework of morality, I think that is very arrogant. It's also delusional, but it is very arrogant at best.
Again, in reverse order.
Don't look for help from the referee. I'm over here.
I incline in your direction, sir. Said it before. Very suggestive thing that you just said. If there was no one in charge, how would we know how to act morally? And this is indeed a very profound observation. It's said in, it's argued by Smerdyakov in the Brothers Karamazov. It said, without God, anything is permissible. Some people believe that. Some people believe them without the fear of divine total surveillance and supervision. Everyone would do exactly as they wished, and we would all be wolves to each other. I think there's an enormous amount of evidence that that's not the case, that morality is innate in us, that solidarity is part of our self-interest in society as well as our own interest. And very much to argue the contrary, that when you see something otherwise surprising to you, such as a good person acting in a wicked manner, it's very often because they believe they are under divine orders to do so. Stephen Weinberg puts it very well. He says, left to themselves, evil people will do evil things and good people will try and do good things. If you want a good person to do a wicked thing, that takes religion. For example, I simply do not believe that my Palestinian friends have known for years think that to blow yourself up outside an orphanage is a moral act, or inside one is a moral act, or in an old people's home in Netanya is a moral action. That anything in their nature makes them think this. But their mullahs tell them that it is, and that the person doing this is a hero. I do not think that any person looking at a newborn baby would think, how wonderful, what a gift, but now just let's start sawing away this genitalia with a sharp stone. Who would give them that idea if not the godly? And what kind of argument from design is this? Babies are not born beautiful, they're born ugly. They need to be sawn a bit because the handiwork of God is such garbage. Well, honestly, this is what I mean when I say that those who think there's any connection between ethics and religion have all their work still ahead of them, and after thousands of years, still have it all ahead of them more and more. There.
So you do not believe in your long and thorough research of history that atheists ever did anything evil. These were only religious people that were driven by somebody representing God that made them do that. And people that came in satanic ways, all of that is rubbish. Only religious people reading scriptures of some sort have done wicked things in the history of the world.
I should have raised that question myself, and I realized also...
But you didn't, so I did, so that's...
But I've never yet been at one of these meetings where it didn't come up, but I owe you yet another answer. When you say you've had this confirming emotion in your own life, of course, I would not be so presumptuous as to challenge you. Indeed, I believe people when they say that they have experienced miracles. I believe that they think that they have. I think I'm obliged to credit them if it comes to that. As long as they keep it to, if you like, if I can put it like this, modestly as I dare, to themselves. If I believe that I was saved because once a baby boy was born and before mutilated, made the extraordinary discovery that he escaped the female birth canal. Mother was a virgin, or at least her birth canal was only one way. Thus I was a sorry thing, by the way, religion's distaste for these regions, don't you find? And something to put you on your guard. Suppose I thought, okay, now I know that must prove his teachings are true, which it doesn't seem to me that they do, but suppose I did, and I'm going to be saved by it. I think that was a wonderful secret. It would make me happy. It should make me happy. It doesn't make people happy. They can't be happy until I believe it too. My children must be taught this stuff. No, sir, no ma'am, no day, no way, no shape, no form. You keep your illusion private. And I hope it does make you happy, and there's perhaps some reason why it would. But we're told with the Pope's authority to say you can't have a condom comes from his ability to certify a miracle, a disturbance in the natural order. I think it was David Hume who put it slightly vulgarly. This was again about the virgin birth, I think. Which is more likely, that the whole natural order is suspended, or that a Jewish minx should tell a lie? There has to be an answer to this kind of question. As to the secular bad behavior, well, I used to be a believing Marxist, and I've had this argument about communism in different forms all my life, and I realized it was you confront me with an intensely serious question, and that no, actually secular criminality on the political level wasn't really possible until pretty much the late 18th century, because the religious monopoly on violence and cruelty and torture and slavery and so on was so intense. It has to be said that some of my non-believing forebears seized the opportunity to behave the same way. Sure.
It's Al Sharpton and Christopher Hitchens, 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 and Al Sharpton. And Sharpton is going for God, Hitchens is going for no God.
There's no question about it. And I'll put it like this, to take the best known case.
Yep, Hitchens.
Up until 1917, the Tsar of Russia was not just the absolute ruler and owner of all of Russia and all the Russian people and everything in it, but he was also the head of the Russian Orthodox Church. He was considered by the church and the people to be something a little more than divine. Excuse me, a little more than human.
And once again, even Al Sharpton hits him with the same thing that I agree with all atheists, up until the point when you have to say you don't know either. You can't prove that there's a God, but you can't prove that there isn't a God. We can pretty much agree that the Bible is not the what it is, and that's my biggest thing. It's like religions are kind of crap, but you can't say that there isn't anything. You don't fucking know. Nobody knows. I'm not going to believe your religion because I don't know that some God came into the form of a human man through a virgin birth and was like, it was written in the Bible. Man, fuck the Bible. We can study the Bible, but that shit is not credible. And then some of the other stories in the Bible just make it seem so fucking fallacious that it's retarded.
If you were Stalin, you'd be crazy if you didn't take advantage of a people who had centuries of indoctrination of that kind. Of course you would want to see if you couldn't replicate that and to see about reproducing it, emulating it, trading on it, taking advantage of it. You'd be nuts if you didn't do it. So the answer, I think, which is a very long process, will be a long cultural process, is to try and move people up to a cultural and intellectual level where they are above that kind of appeal, where they're not credulous, where they don't take things on faith, where they don't make gods or idols or images out of anybody, including fellow human beings, and they learn the pleasures of thinking for themselves. How about that for a modest proposal?
I'd like to use my referee's power to ask you each a question before we open it to the audience for questions. And Christopher, my question for you, taking up the cudgels a little bit for Reverend Sharpton, you keep coming back. Back to various forms of biblical literalism. Reverend, somewhat to my surprise, has not defended anything in the Bible and asks quite reasonably, what is your problem with deism? You've written about Paine, Jefferson, you write your book about Einstein and Darwin, who are arguably deists in a way. Since you say yourself you can't prove God doesn't exist, what is your problem with faith divorced from religious text or literalism?
Well, religion is not the belief that there is a God, after all. Religion is the belief that God tells you what to do. So, if we are to talk about religion, we are not talking. Theism believes in the existence of the creating being, but it has no prescriptions for morality. You can't, as a theist, cannot say, I think that this universe is so well designed that it implies a creator. Therefore, don't be going to bed with another member of the same sex. Theism, deism, excuse me. Did I say theism that time? Deism, is therefore not a religion. This is the first for me. I've never yet met someone in holy orders who has said that the words of the holy books are nothing to do with God. I know there's a lot of laxity in the churches these days. And I've been trying to encourage it, but I mean, it seems to me I could have been pushing at a slightly more well-defended door. Jefferson, who could have been a great paleontologist, a great botanist, or was in fact all of these things, couldn't shake the feeling that the sheer order and beauty of it implied something. And but he had these great discussions with his French counterparts. How come the seashells, you find them so high up on the mountaintops? What is that? He had no idea. He died after 1819. The great day in 1819 is the day that Mr. Lincoln is born and Mr. Darwin is born, the same day. I know which one of them was the greater emancipator, too. Jefferson couldn't see as far. We just didn't have the horizon. Now you can hold to the deist belief if you choose, if you like. But the overwhelming evidence is that we do have an explanation for the origins of the species, ours and all others. And that each new discovery made, in however remote a part of the Earth's surface, in paleontology, will confirm, or not confute, or not contradict the body of knowledge that we have so painstakingly erected. So everything else added to that is a work of what the Church of England used to call supererogation. It's needless, it's unnecessary. Occam's razor disposes painlessly of it. It's gone, it's history.
Turn to you, Reverend Sharpton, for a moment. I was expecting you to, I think you very eloquently made a version of the argument from design. You have argued of an idea of spirituality, but you haven't defended the Bible at all. I mean, isn't that what you do from the pulpit?
Maybe I read the wrong book. I did not get the book that Hitchens wrote. The Bible is not great. I didn't get a copy of the book that religion is not great. He said God is not great. And I have yet to, after several inquiries here tonight, get him to address that. And when I read his book and hear him talk, he makes a case against everything other than God. Maybe the name of the book should have been God is not great, I don't think. Or you have the right to think he's great if you just don't tell me. That might have been a more appropriate title. But I'm waiting for him to establish that God, not King James, not Muhammad, not Jerry Falwell, God is not great. So to ask me to defend who I have no personal relationship with, no belief in, is I'm in the wrong debate. I think that we can then agree that as long as I don't bother the sedate scholarly world of Mr. Hitchens, that I can believe in my God. And he's fine. And I'm fine with that, because I'm certainly not trying to convert Mr. Hitchens. I'm just trying to have him understand that he cannot impose upon me how I relate to God by quoting things that I may or may not believe anyway.
I'm afraid we're not going to have any conversions tonight. And I wasn't expecting any, although you never know if Christopher is going to start speaking in tongues before we're done. Let's take some questions from the audience. There is...
Is it working? Thank you very much. Gentlemen, thank you very much for the discussion. This question is for Mr. Hitchens. Based on your prior writings, based on most recently a Time Out interview with you in which you claimed that the only time you ever prayed to God was for an erection, I'm going to ask you this question.
Was that a miracle?
Okay, lady.
Great. The question, Mr. Hitchens, is...
What people, what people usually want to know was the prayer answer.
Not me, baby. Should we, normal, sane Americans, continue to be so bedazzled by a bespoke, off-cam superficialist who just wants the U.S. to pick up the many disastrous pieces of the British Empire, and whose understanding of God is much shorter than his penis?
What? Wait a minute. That just got really uncomfortable. Oh wow, lady. What? And I wasn't even looking to see what she looked like, but Al Sharpton made the little joke, was like, was that a miracle? And she's like, oh yeah, baby. And then she says penis with such forcefulness and thrust. I'm embarrassed for her. I don't think I'm gonna finish listening to that now. Whose understanding of God is much shorter than his penis. Oh, yeah, let's not finish that. Yeah.
You can only be hate. Love. Now, in saying that, I hate Muslims. Hang on, I didn't finish my sentence. I hate Muslims, I hate Christians, I hate the Amish, I hate Buddhists, I hate the snake people, I hate Jews, I don't know who I've missed here. Sikhs, I hate all. Our fight in this world is not against Islam, it's against religion. Be very clear about this. Because I can tell you this for sure. No one's head has ever been cut off in the name of atheism. No one has ever cut into human flesh and looked down camera and gone, in the name of nothing! Now let me be clear about this. If you're religious, I'm sure some of you might be very nice, but you are slowing us down. We're trying to move forward and you're in the fucking way, I'm sorry. See, there's a lie that you'll be told throughout your life that will go along the lines of this. We have to save the planet. There's no bigger lie than we have to save the planet. We don't have to save the planet. We have to save us, the human race. The planet does not give a fuck about us, and it will be happy when we're gone. We are in the planet's way. Have you ever seen one of those documentaries where they go, this is what New York will look like 1 year after the human race dies, and it's all covered in vines and shit? The planet wants us gone. As soon as we're gone, the planet will go, I'm going to do dinosaurs again, right? So we have to save ourselves in spite of the planet trying to kick us the fuck off. Right? Now imagine that the world is a train track and society is a train. And as society has always had to do, the train has to move forward. Because if it stops moving forward, we will run out of resources around the train because it'll be stationary. And the gears will lock up and the vines will take over. So it has to keep going forward. Now in this train, we have the people in the engine room, the people who are running the show. And those people in our society who run the show are scientists. These are the people who are inventing medicines for you to live longer, and surgeries for you to live longer, and finding alternative fuel sources. And engineers that are making machines that run more efficiently. Right? Now, all these people are scientists. Now, whether you like it or not, scientists are primarily atheists. And they're all in the front carriage dragging us along. Now, in the second carriage, we have a bunch of cunts that I don't think get fucking enough flack. Agnostics. These fucking wishy-washy fucks. They're all standing around the second carriage going, who knows? You know, maybe there is a God, maybe there isn't a God, maybe your God and your God are the same God. But like, I know there was a Big Bang, but who made the Big Bang? I wouldn't consider myself, you know, religious, but I am spiritual. And then there's this last carriage, and the last carriage is 50 times bigger than the other two carriages combined. And it's carrying the rest of the population of the human race. And it's just filled with cunts wearing hats for reasons they don't know. And growing beards because they think they have to. And some of the women are covering their faces and cowering. Everyone's dancing around going, man on the cloud, man on the cloud. And there are so many of these cunts that the train is hardly fucking moving. And the people in the engine room are like this. If I just pull this peg here. Do you know how fast we'd be moving?
I'm not raising my kids religiously because I don't feel like it. Just get up on a Sunday, fuck that. Fuck that. Let your souls rot, kids. I don't care. I'm not getting it. Daddy, who's Jesus? None of your business. Go back to bed. But my kids, you know, they're living in the world, and there's a lot of religion in the world, so you do have to teach your kids, if you're not raising them religiously, you do have to teach them about religion, you know? I always tell my kids the same thing. I tell them that there are many religions in the world, and they're all equal, but the Christians are the main one. That's what I tell them. The Christians won, they're the winners, so act accordingly. Congratulate Christians when you meet them. Because they won the world. And it's true. It's true. We love to tell ourselves, like, every religion is exactly... No, they're not. that Christians won everything a long time ago. If you don't believe me, let me ask you a question. What year is it? I mean, come on. What year is it according to the entire human race? And why? What year is it? Anybody, sir, just yell out the year. Thank you. 2016. No, it's 20. That's right. It's 2017. What is that? That's a number. It's not just any number. It must be a very important number because we're counting to it in unison as a species. For thousands of years, we've been going 1, 2, 3. Come on, everybody. 4. Now, come on, Africa. 5, 6. What is this number? We're counting the days. Since what? Since there was ever people, or since the sun did it something? Not at all. It's been 2017 years since what? Anybody yell it out. Since, yes, Christ! Christ! That's right. It's been 2017 years since Christ! Jesus! We are counting the days since Jesus together. Which makes sense if you're a Christian, but what the fuck are the rest of us doing? Jesus was here, Jesus was here, Jesus was here. Everybody, scientists, historians, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus plus 2, Jesus plus 3, Jesus plus 4. Jesus plus 2017 years, 4 months, and 3 days is when your license expires.
People do it anyway.
But what is the point?
We're lowly human beings. We pray for all kinds of things.
I'm told by people who pray. I say to them, suppose God doesn't answer your prayer. And they say, well, then it's His will. I will accept His will. Then what is the point of praying in the first place if he's going to do what He wants to anyway? There's supposedly a divine plan. How are you so arrogant as to ask Him to change His plan for some narrow reason, whether it's health or wealth? I mean,
we are arrogant. We all think the world revolves around us.
But do you think prayer works? I mean, I pray to Joe Pesci.
I don't believe it.
I pray to Joe Pesci, and I get the same results. I get the same results I used to get from God when I was 9 years old, and I believed in the invisible man in the sky. Yeah. You get about half the things you pray for. It's laws of probability. Half the things you pray for, you get. Half of them you don't. You write off the half you don't. The half you get, you say, oh, isn't he great? And it's just a game. It's a form of mental illness.
No,
There's no God.
Insulting as that is.
There is no God. Will He strike me dead right now? Will He? He doesn't dare.
You know what?
He doesn't dare. He doesn't dare. He doesn't dare.
I think it's all care about our individual views.
That's a good point. Yeah. You know, when you talk about God in this society, when you profess a belief in God, they just toss the name around. You know, every end of every politician's speech, God bless us all, God bless you, God bless America. And let me say,
and God bless you, and God bless the book being number one.
That's lovely. He had very little to do with that. It's all individual human. No, please let me explain something. God, it's a wonderful idea. It's a nice fantasy. It's a way of keeping people in line. It's a way of controlling people. There is as much proof for the existence of God, or even evidence. Forget proof. There's as much evidence for the existence of God as there is for the existence of UFOs and extraterrestrials. And yet, if you mention them for a moment, you're considered outside, beyond the pale. You're a kook. You're marginalized. You're crazy. If you mention if you don't love God, then there's something wrong with you. It's absurd.
What if it makes people feel better?
That's a different thing. If you want to give the universe the name God, that's fine. The universe exists. We are all equal parts of it. We are made of the same stuff.
Most religions are based on the idea that somebody in some way through prayer can make you feel better.
But why do you need to make up stories?
Yes, why
does the Supreme Being have to be just...
Because life is hard, and you need to make make up stories.
As long as you realize you're weak-minded, you need that.
I don't understand the arrogance of saying
A lot of strong-minded people who are very, very sincere.
Appear strong-minded, but if they really believe that there's a man in the sky keeping score, something is wrong with them.
As long as you believe in something that
I believe in the vastness of the universe and in infinity. I believe in family and friends. I believe in love.
So that's your God.
No, it's not my God. Those are not God.
That's your spiritual.
God means an old man in the sky.
It doesn't mean that to me.
Why do you use the word? Why do you need the word God? What does the word God do?
Yeah, I don't need the word God.
Does he decide things for you?
No, he doesn't. I don't believe in a he at all.
What all these other
I believe
people
in the
believe.
universe.
You have a more sophisticated approach to it, and I respect it.
But I don't denigrate anybody else's
Oh, I
approach
do.
to it.
I do too. I do too. And I say it all the time. And I'll say it again.
Was the earth created in 7 days? No. For those of you who believe it was, for you Christians, let me tell you that you do not understand the Jewish people. We Jews understand that it did not take place in 7 days, and that's because we know what we're good at. And what we're really good at is bullshit. This is a wonderful story that was told to the people in the desert in order to distract them from the fact that they did not have air conditioning. I would love to have the faith to believe that it took place in 7 days, but I have thoughts. And that can really fuck up the faith thing. Just ask any Catholic priest. And then there are fossils. Whenever anybody tries to tell me that they believe it took place in 7 days, I reach for a fossil and go, fossil. If they keep talking, I throw it just over their head.
Not because I don't believe in a higher power, I definitely do. My thing is, when I go to church, I can't get past the fact that I'm just listening to some fucking guy. You ever think of that shit when you go in there? That's just some dude. And people are like, no, that's a special guy. No, it isn't. It isn't. Nah, he didn't like levitate down from the ceiling like, oh, there's white light around him. Why would you listen to another human being tell you where you're gonna go when you die? It's just like, dude, have you ever been dead? No. Great. So wouldn't it be safe to assume that you wouldn't have the slightest fucking idea what you're talking about? Hey, you're making it up. You're making the shit up. You're not fooling me with the robes and the candles. Speaking in old English. He said it unto you. Shut the fuck up. You don't talk like that. You're just some guy. Your name's Jerry. You play soccer. You got your ass kicked in gym class. And now you're doing this.
I'm about to get out of here in a minute, guys.
This week, carry out large 2-topping pizzas for just $5.99 each, only at Domino's.
Star Citizen 3.5 and my journey to ArcCorp. This was a very special experience for me. I've been following Star Citizen for a long time. I forcibly unplugged myself in between massive patches because there's so much excitement, so much news, and so much waiting with this game. But finally, 3.5 is out for any backer of the game right now, and it allows you to go to this truly spectacular part of the game. And I have to admit, while editing this video, it was hard not to put the coolest clips first, because normally I like to put the most spectacular thing or a glimpse of the most spectacular thing at the start of the video, but I kind of wanted to create this video linearly. I want you guys to experience the things in the order that I experienced them going to ArcCorp for the first time, because it really was special. It reminds me a lot of my first time playing the very first Half-Life game, where you get on a tram and it takes you through the Black Mesa compound and you're just blown away by the scale and the fidelity of the game. And this is sort of that same experience, but on a scale that I never thought would be possible. The stylings of ArcCorp are Blade Runner meets Star Wars Coruscant. The artwork, the audio design, the atmospherics are incredible. Normally when there's a game that goes for something of this scale, I feel like we're gonna have to cut corners in certain areas. But walking through the Star Citizen universe on ArcCorp, it feels like no expense was spared. It feels like they've gone full out with every nook and cranny of this game. And it's not to say that I haven't seen other games that are very detail-oriented and visually impressive and have great artwork, but to combine that level of detail and artwork and fidelity with a game world that will feature scale beyond the scope of anything we've seen in the past by a magnitude of 100-fold, maybe 1,000-fold, it's hard to wrap your head around. And simply put, the ambitious goals of Star Citizen have created a culture of people who just simply don't believe it. They don't believe that this game is capable of becoming a reality. But what's so exciting about 3.5 is it's demonstrating the most difficult thing that this engine set out to do, and it's demonstrating that it is capable of doing that, which is a massive scale, almost full-size planet scale, procedurally generated city planet that you can examine up close and personal and have it look completely believable from start to finish. This is one of those things that I feel is unbelievable until you see it and experience it firsthand. And that's what I'm going to be showing off later in the video. First things first, though, my journey out of the ArcCorp spaceport over to Area 18. So this is currently the only sort of mission-giving shopping area that they've added to ArcCorp at the moment. Again, this is the very first time we're seeing this planet in the very early stages of this game, so it's very, very lightly fleshed out in terms of what you can do on ArcCorp. But just the journey coming out of the spaceport here is ridiculous, and I think I caught it at the perfect time of day. As it's dawn, the sun is coming over the horizon, the atmosphere is kind of smoggy, since it is an entirely industrial planet. It makes sense that it wouldn't be the cleanest, most breathable air. But flying through this city with actual scaled buildings and neon lights everywhere, and it looks so insane to me. Words truly fail the spectacle of the experience here. It's one of those things that I feel, even watching the YouTube video, just doesn't do it justice, because having the freedom to explore this world at your own will just allows you to absorb the fact that there are far less boundaries here than you might think. Now, just to clarify so people don't actually lose their minds over what they're seeing here, the detail and the interactability of ArcCorp as a world is not going to be universally everywhere. You can go and land on buildings at any point around the planet, but those buildings might not let you inside of them. Or you might not have any mission givers or people to talk to in certain areas of the planet. So a lot of it will just be for looks because, well, realistically, handcrafting an entire planet is insane and is impossible. So there will be certain areas of our corp that will feel very alive and very detailed that you can interact with, and the rest of the world will be predominantly for looks. That's not to say that ArcCorp, once fully fleshed out, won't have hundreds, if not thousands, of areas to explore and interact with, and in that sense it will feel like a planet that is so massive you might never be able to explore or experience everything that is offered there. And that is a cool concept.
Alright guys, we'll take a break. Just wanted to get started on that face a little bit, get my palette loaded, start working on some of the tones that I'll be using. I feel comfortable with the colors I got on there, so I'll get back at this later on tonight or probably first thing in the morning. Peace, till next time.